Well, it's martini time again. How it just keeps rolling around. So, I spent the day in Costco. I went to Richmond. Every couple of weeks we go to Costco, load up. And I stopped at Barnes & Noble. So, whoops. Oh, before I, see, I have this is my dragon glass. In China, the dragon is the, not the same dragon as you have in the European mythology. The Chinese dragon is benevolent. I mean, it's the symbol of energy, and so I wanted to talk about that dragon again. But let me put this down before I spill it. So I went to Barnes & Noble. And I haven't been there for a while. My upstairs meditation room has two bookcases, and they're full of Buddha books. Some yoga books, mostly Buddha books. There's an interesting thing. So I just got this book. You probably can't read it. It says Don't Be a Jerk by Brad Warner. And he wrote two other books, Sit Down and Shut Up and Hardcore Zen. So the reason I'm interested in this, and I got it because I like his writing, and what he does basically is take these ancient Zen teachings, like Dogen, who was the founder of Soto Zen, which is the sitting Zen, and I think he was in maybe the 4th century. So these teachings in Zen go back, in Buddhism, go back hundreds and hundreds of years. And something very interesting is happening that a lot of people aren't aware of, but I am, and that is that when yoga and Buddhism, Eastern traditions, came to the West in the 60s with people like Alan Watts and Ram Dass and the Hindu gurus, and all of this teaching flooded in. And Zen, Buddhism, came to the West in a slow drip to Europe, but it came in a flood to America in the 60s and in the 70s. And it came in from two directions. It came in from Japan, which was Zen, and that was discovered by America after World War II, when America occupied Japan. And it came in through Tibetan Buddhism when China came down with his hammer on Tibet, and like Mercury, all of the Buddhist lamas and all the teaching was scattered into the West like seeds. So the West was seeded with Tibetan Buddhism and this ancient teaching when the Chinese forced them out, and it was seeded with Zen from Japan through World War II. So these two strains of Buddhism, and then there's a third strain, which is from Southeast Asia, which was basically the Hinayana Buddhism of the Little Fairy, which was more for monks and monasteries. So these three strains of Buddhism come into the America, materialistic America, along with yoga. Now, yoga and Buddhism are both transcendental traditions. Their purpose is to awaken you to your true nature. And the yoga tradition goes back before Buddha. In fact, Buddha was a yogi. He just boiled it down for export. So you can't export Hinduism because it's an ethnic religion. It's kind of like Judaism. You have to be born a Hindu. It's a culture religion. So it doesn't export. But Buddhism exports, just like Christianity. It exports because Buddha himself dropped all of the Indian metaphysics. Indian mind loves metaphysical. They love expanding and creating universes full of gods and stories, and so Buddhism was more just this. if it doesn't awaken you, drop it. If it's not necessary for your awakening and realization, discard it. Just bypass it. Don't even mess with it. Just bypass it. Just go for awakening. That's it. So that's why it became very exportable. If you go to Barnes & Noble, particularly because there you can see it on a shelf. Buddha's, books are like cereal there. And you've got, go find religion, and there'll be a big shelf there of what I call Buddha books. But most of the new writing, most of the creative writing, books like this, are about meditation, insight meditation, mindfulness, meditation, insight meditation, Dharma. They're not about becoming a Buddhist and worshiping a Buddha and all that, because Buddhism, that's just a Asian offshoot, where you think, well, you got to go worship and bow to a big stone statue. No, that's not Buddhism. Buddhism is transcending and bypassing all false idols, which includes Buddhism. So Buddhism is not about becoming anything. It's about not becoming anything. So it's no religion, no self, no soul. Just this, just the bare necessities, just the bare awareness of what's real and what's not real. Just this, just what is real, you see. So it really gets down to the Zen, you see. So Zen is basically a practice of awakening. It's all about awakening. It's all about satori, or kensho, or I see it. So when you watch a murder mystery and the detective can't figure out who did it, and maybe somebody says something trivial to him, and he's, aha, I see who did it. And he goes running off to catch the murderer. That's Zen. Aha, I see it. Archimedes, when he's in the bathtub and he can't figure out how to find the volume of a crown of gold, and he sees the water displacement of his own body. Ah, eureka, I see it. And he goes running down the street, you see. That's Zen. So Zen is about awakening, and awakening is about creativity. When you awaken your creativity. The awakening itself is creative. The awakening is a creative act. It's leaping beyond what you know. It's leaping beyond the past. It's leaping beyond conditioning. It's leaping beyond your suffering, you see. So, so I've been reading Buddha books now for a number of years, and I don't read as much anymore. What I do now is I have a few primary Buddha Dharma teachers that I read, and I read them over and over again, like I did with Eckhart Tolle. I read him for 2 or 3 years, over and over and over again. And the reason for that is that because the awakening is a transmission. And we have to, but it's beyond words. Awakening is a transmission that cannot be contained or explained or described in words. So it's beyond words. It's like the menu explains the food and the pictures look really great, but it's not the food. You see, so thought is a reflection of reality. If you look at a mirror, there's the mirror and then there's the reflection. Thought is the reflection. And the self as a thought is a reflection of reality. It's not the real. So Zen is about the reflection, seeing that it's a reflection, and becoming the mirror. I know. The mirror knows that it's not the reflection. So the mirror wakes up and knows what reality is. Whereas before, it thought reality was the reflection of reality, which is the thinking mind, is language, you see. So we're all trapped in language, in thinking. And we have to wake up from that. It doesn't mean thinking goes away. It just means we don't take it seriously anymore. Thinking becomes our dog that heals. Instead of pulling us on the leash to every pile of crap on the road, thinking heals, and it sits and it's just there when you need it. But until you do that, you're going to be pulled by the leash of thinking. And you're going to be just standing there while thinking sniffs out all the crap, you see, and goes in circles. Where is thinking going? I don't know, but I got to go because I'm attached to it. So we're talking about lay Buddhism now. Okay, now so Buddhism, the original teaching of Buddha, he's always taught in all of the scriptures, all of the Buddha's talks, and everything is his talks. He's just talking. For 45 years, he just taught to monks. It was a monastic tradition. If you wanted to become a follower of the Buddha, you became a monk. You took the vows and you left the world. And you put on the robes, and all you had was a bowl and a robe, and that was it. And so once a day you would go out and ask for food. So you were totally dependent upon the winds of God, you see, or grace of the people, you see. So you devoted yourself to the interior world of seeking the truth of your own nature instead of following the world. But see, the monastic tradition is gone now. But, you know, the Middle Ages is gone. We don't have monasteries where every family, at least one person becomes a monk or a nun, you see. A monastic tradition is very small now. But what's happening is that the monastic teachings of Buddha is becoming lay Buddhism. So instead of going to a monastery or a spiritual retreat and leaving the world, now the practice of awakening is in the world. So the practice of Buddha Dharma and Zen is the practice of awakening while you're in the world, while you have a family, while you have a business, while you do all the traffic jams and all the stress. It's awakening in the world instead of leaving the world. A big change. You know, big change. Lay Buddhism means being a monk in disguise. Nobody knows you're a monk. Nobody knows you're a spiritual seeker. Nobody knows you're practicing Dharma, Buddha Dharma. Nobody knows, you see. So, you know, or being mindful. Nobody knows you're practicing meditation. You see, you don't have to put on special clothes and talk a special language and go to special groups, you see, and be different. No, you work in the world that's given. You work in the world, if you're a husband, if you're a wife, mother, father, whatever you are, you work with what's given. That's where you work. You work if you got a bad image, if you got a neurosis, if you got whatever you got, whatever you're given, whatever you work with, that's what you work with. You don't get a new car, you work with the car you got. You don't get new tools, you work with the tools you got. That's my uncle. He was in the First World War, lived to be 99, and he never bought anything new. You know, until it just fell apart and he couldn't use it anymore, then he would get something. But until that, he worked with what he had. It was a you know, people that, now it's just discard. And I'm that way. If it doesn't work, I go buy a new one. You see. But the Buddha way, the Buddha Dharma way, is that you work with what you got. But this is a spiritual practice, you see. So you work with the character you've got. You don't try to fix it. You don't go get a new image. You don't go, you know, you don't exchange yourself for something better. You don't live in the future. You live now. Now is what you got. If you step in the dog poop, you work with that. If you have a fight, you work with that. If you have a panic attack, you work with that. So it's working with what you've got, what you've been given, instead of imagining a better place, a promised land, a kingdom of heaven, you see, the pure land, or try to restore yourself to your original purity, like Trump, restore America, you see. No, that's not the practice. The practice is learning how, discovering how to transmute what you've got into the gold of the Dharma, which is freedom from suffering. So you work with the suffering you've got in order to transmute it into timeless freedom from suffering. Now, the suffering doesn't mean that your body doesn't get old and you don't die. It's the mental suffering, the psychological suffering that we're talking about. Life bites us. Life is a goose that bites us, but it's the second bite that's suffering. It's the second bite of, why is this happening to me? That's the second bite. Or why did you do that to me? That's the second bite. The first bite is just what is. It's the second bite that creates the suffering that we have to see is our own hand biting ourselves, you see. So when the world bites us, it's just a bite. It's like your dog bites you, it's just a bite. Okay? That's what it is. But if you've got a story, if you've got, oh my God, I've got rabies, and oh, we got to get rid of that damn dog, and who brought that dog in here, and all this story, all this suffering comes on. You see, that's the second bite. Excuse me, damn allergies. Have to wash that down. So there is a transformation going on in our culture. You don't see it in Blackstone. You don't see it in the rural areas. You don't see it in on the mainstream TV, CNN or MSNBC. It's kind of like when you want to get a new lawn, and the lawn guy comes with Roundup, and he kills your grass, and then he plugs it with new shoots. It looks all brown, you don't see anything. And then maybe there's a few little shoots of green. And then you go on a vacation and you come back and the whole lawn is green. And the last time you saw it, it was brown. So our culture is kind of like that. There's little shoots of Dharma. There's little shoots of Buddha Dharma growing everywhere, in me, everywhere. And right now we look around and everything looks brown and desolate, and we're going to hell in a handbasket, you see. But there's this organic change happening that if you go to the Barnes and Noble and look at the books, you won't find many yoga books. You can go to the exercise place and you'll find yoga books. And if you go to the religion place, you'll find Buddha books. And that's again, Buddha's not a religion. So there really isn't a place in Barnes and Noble, a category in the West for Buddha, for the Dharma. It's not a religion, it's not an exercise, it's not yoga. And it's not therapy. It's not any of that. So there isn't really a library category or a bookstore category for this teaching. But you can find it in the wrong categories. So don't get misled. It's not a religion. There's no God you have to bow to. There's no tithing. There is no nothing. It's just the intention to relieve myself from suffering, from the mental anguish of living in the modern world, which is rather absurd. And it's getting crazier. It's getting crazy. Okay, thank you very much for dropping in.